All right, if you're trying to sell your house in the Austin area, Central Texas, or anywhere else in Texas, but right now buyers are a little bit hard to come by. We got high interest rates, we've got growing inventory and everything else. You're looking for a little bit of a competitive edge as a seller. That's what this video is all about. I'm here with Ryan and Eric from Leahy Lending in Austin, Texas. We're talking about their MORE program, and there's a previous video that I've done with Ryan, and we talk through just kind of the nuts and bolts of what the MORE program is. We talk about seller financing, owner, and kind of really go back historically why it has a little bit of a bad name and talk about some of that and what their program's doing different. But in this video, what we're doing is we're going to dive into a couple of scenarios and talk about what this does for sellers, how it makes sense for sellers, and why, again, it might be able to give you a competitive advantage. Ryan, Eric, thanks, guys. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. So, Chris, yeah, I appreciate it. You know, what we've done, and just to reiterate a little bit, our MORE seller financing program is designed. We are the first in the country to become seller financing specialists. We have created a turnkey, hassle-free program for sellers and buyers to come together under a seller financing transaction. Several myths that exist in seller financing is A, I have to have my home paid off in order to do seller financing. That is not true. I can't buy my next home if I do seller financing. That is not true. How would I lend to a buyer that can't get a loan? This program is only designed for highly qualified buyers. Number four, I don't just generally is the big objection to people considering seller financing is I don't want to be attached to a buyer for 30 years. And that's not this program either. So this program, again, is called MORE Seller Financing, and it's actually MORE Seller Financing Marketing Program.
Yep.
One of the biggest things also, Chris, is sellers believe that if they offer seller financing, that all buyers want seller financing. And frankly, it's just not the case. Buyers also are kind of leery because it's a new concept for a lot of folks. They've heard about it. It's lived in a dirty sandbox for the most part for at least the last 10, 15 years of one party always getting taken advantage of. There's lots of things that can go wrong. So, but if there was a solution, and we are the very first solution that offers a complete turnkey, hassle-free package that's covered all of the facets that are included in seller financing. And so we have everything from the law firm that's going to make sure that everybody is the deal is going to be done to the letter of the law. It's going to offer significant protections for the seller and the buyer as far as due on sale clause is concerned, and all the different aspects that can be concerned with a seller financing transaction, as well as like you've got credit risk, you've got property risk, you've got a lot of different things to think about. But one of the biggest ways that we mitigate all of this is it's really about who you sell to, right? And so, Chris, when we ask our agents, we only work through realtors. This is a realtor-centric program, and our agents and sellers are looking for another tool other than a price drop, right? I mean, at the end of the day, traditional marketing is not getting the results that it used to. But what we are finding is traditional marketing plus creative financing is. And so what's that creative financing? What we found is that we are teaching sellers how to leverage their current low interest rate loans that might be at 3% or below 4% and offer it at 5.5% or even 6% or mid fives, low fives, whatever it takes in order to help that home stand out and be more affordable than all the others. Because in a buyer's market, which is what we're in today, buyers want a deal. The reality is, though, yeah, don't they, Chris? I mean, right? The reality is, though, sellers that have nice properties, they don't want to give a deal. Right. And because they have really low interest rates, their cost of holding onto the property and their motivation is so low, and their motivation to drop their price is just really not there. And so you have this big gap in the market. What we found is that we're able to bridge that gap by helping sellers achieve their sales price and buyers achieve the affordability through lower interest rates. And we help, since it's not available in the market for reasonable costs on the, through traditional lending, we built the More Seller Financing program that allows sellers to monetize their current low interest rate and as well as offer a below market interest rate to the buyers, achieving a win-win solution. And so we have the servicing company, we've got the proper insurance companies that are involved in all this. There's lots of different facets of it. So that's a quick overview of what we talked about last time before we get jumping in on this. At the end of the day, the transaction starts with the seller. The seller has to be open and willing to provide seller financing. And so most sellers, they're kind of look at it like, not really sure. So we ask sellers, is there any circumstance in which you would consider seller financing for a relatively short period of time? Because you heard me talk about the 4 main objections of the transaction. So first off, for a relatively short period of time, let's start there. 1, our transactions for seller financing are generally less than 3 years, 3 years or less, the large majority of our transactions. Now, the seller can determine to do it longer or shorter. We've done some 5 years. We've done a couple of one for 7 years. We've done one for 6 years. But the large majority of them are 3 years. But that's up to the seller and the buyer on what's going to meet their needs in order to come together. Number 2, this is only a program for a very highly qualified buyer. These buyers must get pre-approved through Leahy Lending so that we can protect the seller and make sure the seller is making an informed decision, and as far as from a credit risk perspective, and we can make sure of the quality of the pre-approval. So Chris, what we do with the sellers is the buyers give us authorization to have a very transparent conversation with the sellers on their qualifications. So we don't forward them anything, but we do have a conversation with them. And what that's about is what's their middle credit score? They've got a 629 or, a 729 middle credit score. They've got a 760 middle credit score, whatever the case may be. How long have they worked where they're working? How much money is left in the bank after down payment? What's their job history? What's their job stability? What is going on in their life that may make this a more risky loan than not? Or is this pretty down the middle of the fairway and this buyer deserves a really great interest rate? So in order to bring the deal together. Now, with that being said, when we put these things together, the seller also has to win too. So the seller is going to be making a monthly income off of usually the rate arbitrage, and Eric is going to show us that in a little bit, as well as generally the seller is going to receive full price or really close to full price for giving a lower interest rate. And what we'll show is that buyers will actually receive a significantly lower payment with this lower interest rate than if they were to get a 5% reduction in sales price. Mm-hmm. So their monthly payment is much lower than what they can get through the conventional market. So with that being said, Eric is my vice president, the vice president of More Seller Financing, and he's prepared a seller transaction. Now, generally, Chris, these are usually our medium price point on where most sellers in our world are, around 600,000. I'm not sure exactly what the price point Eric's worked up, but we've done these as low as 250,000. Most of our properties sellers require 20% down or even 25% down. We've had a lot of sellers get 100% of their equity. So if they've got $350,000 of equity and they have a loan at 500,000, we have buyers that are putting $350,000 down. Wow. And giving sellers 100% of their equity so that they can move on. The other part about it is we talked about how sellers are worried about it impacting their next purchase. We reverse engineer the seller financing, and the seller gets pre-approved with us as well for their next home so that they don't accept a seller financing transaction that would prevent them from achieving their goals of their next home. So, Eric, with that being the stage, I think I've set the stage pretty well on some of the things that we're going to cover and go into that. So, Eric, I'll turn it over to you so that you can kind of show us what you've worked up.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. So Ryan touched on one point on here. A very key component of this is a marketing program. This is designed to get as many eyeballs on your listing as possible. whether it goes a traditional financing route or a cash offer or more seller financing. Our goal is to drive buyers to your listing and make it the most attractive one on the block. Give people a reason to buy your house versus the one next door, regardless of what that sales price is, and to take a lot of that drive to negotiate down that sales price out of it, because when people are talking about sales price, they're really talking about monthly payment, right? So we want to bring eyes on properties. So I'm going to rehash a little bit of what Ryan said here with a couple slides before we dive into numbers. Pop this up real quick. All right. So again, we want to bring them to the door here. So our benefits to the buyer side. We're looking to give this buyer a interest rate 2 to 3% below market. With this, we're also looking at reduced closing costs. Sometimes you might be able to get to an interest rate that's provided by the MORE or offered by the sellers through the MORE program, but you're going to pay, 6-7% in discount points in order to buy that interest rate, if that's even available and you can legally do it. On top of that, what you're doing is you're expanding your buyer pool. You're not only getting the buyers who are looking in that neighborhood anyway, you're bringing in people who have been sitting on the sidelines waiting for interest rates to go back down into the 5s because you're already offering them 1 in the 5s. Yeah. And you're bringing people who have been priced out of that listing sales price. They've been priced out of that market because they just cannot qualify at 7.5% for that loan amount. So now you're able to bring people to the door that are excited to move up into a better neighborhood, better schools, just really get a better quality house.
Yeah.
Not only that.
We talk about it a lot that that 1% in interest rate decrease or increase change. I mean, it moves the needle 10, 11, 12% in purchasing power. So Absolutely. If a buyer can get a 2% reduction, you're talking 20 to 25% increase in buying power for the same price. That's what they're talking about, guys.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, another key component there is strategic timing. So if everybody else is sitting around waiting for interest rates to drop, when interest rates do drop, you're going to have a feeding frenzy again. We all know what it was like 2 years ago where you couldn't get a contract. I mean, I was buying a house 2 years ago, and it took me with my network of realtors forever to land a contract on a house I wanted without having to throw $50,000 up and above the value of the home to get it. Yeah. So you're able to buy, the buyers are able to buy a house now before those rates drop and before they start driving that frenzy. So how we are going to benefit the sellers, because that's what is equally, if not more important on here, because we want to help them sell their house. So what we do is we provide a marketing campaign that is a bolt-on tool for the agent's listing. We're going to co-market with them, showcase the house, showcase the benefits of doing the seller financing on, and increase that traffic. Again, we want to drive all the buyers to this property. Again, like I said, we're trying to maximize that sales price because people are getting that monthly payment that they're looking for at a lower sales price. But we're also pulling a little bit of their ability to negotiate that sales price down. If you want to give a low-ball offer, submit your conventional offer on there. And if the seller wants to take it, absolutely. We're also showing sellers a way to get monthly interest income. So this is a great tool to drive hassle-free, basically mailbox money each month without the seller having to lift a finger to go chase payments, to handle escrows, to do any of it, which ties into the next one, turnkey. We're going to make this as hassle-free as humanly possible. We want to take everything out of that seller's hands and the buyer's hands, make it as easy as possible, make it as safe as possible, and mitigate all the risks that we can. So with that being said, let's take a look. All right, this is a super high overview, and I'm going to kind of get into how we get to these numbers on this. But in this scenario, which was actually built on a real one that we have going right now, we're able, at this $600,000 sales price, we're able to generate for the seller $1,058 in monthly income, which over the course of this is going to give them $71,980 additional return on this sale, which equates to 28% more. That's a huge number. That's massive. Yeah. You can sell the house now, but if you're willing to space this over 3 years, we can get you $72,000 more. Now with the buyer, again, we want to give them benefit. So we're offering up an interest rate that's 2.09% below market. We're saving them on a $600,000 house. We're saving them $645 a month. And in order to buy, you can't even get to that interest rate I'm about to show, but to get to just do the math on secondary marketing on there, it would take almost $23,000 in discount points to get that, if you could find anybody that would offer.
Possible, yeah.
So we'll dig in a little bit here on numbers on how we get to it. So in this scenario, this seller owes $330,000 on their house, and they have an interest rate of 3.125%. So their monthly principal and interest payment on here is $1,516. What we're proposing is a 20% down payment, full price offer at $600,000, which in the Austin area, I'll get to that in a second, but in the Austin area, depending on the month, you're looking at a 5% decrease between current list price and closed price.
Yeah, and 5% is generous. I'm seeing a lot of 7 and 8% right now.
Yeah. We go out the averages across the area, but yeah, certain pockets in there, you're taking a massive drop, and we don't want that.
Right.
So with this, we're marketing this one at 4.99%. It's a hair under that 2% figure. With this, their principal and interest payment would be $2,574 on this new note at $480,000 at 4.99%. Now, with this program, we absolutely require that the buyer is going to have an escrow account. This escrow account is mandatory for taxes, insurance, and HOA. We want to make sure that that property is protected, that the transaction is protected. So it does need to go through certain steps with certain insurance agents to make sure everything is correct and that that house is covered. We want to make sure there's not going to be any tax liens that pop up because either the buyer wasn't paying or on the back end, the seller wasn't paying.
Yep.
So we're taking that out of the equation. This is all going into the servicing department, and they're going to handle it straight away. So with this, once we kick into it, now we're starting to get into the numbers. So the current payment is $1,516. The new mortgage on there at 4.99% is $2,574. So that monthly difference, that arbitrage, is coming in at $1,058 a month. Over the course of 3 years, that's $38,000. Now, obviously, that's principal and that's interest, but they are making that net difference. Monthly, they're not chasing anything. This is all handled through servicing. This net return right there monthly is going to pop into their bank account on a scheduled day. Now, the beauty of this is while we're moving forward through this process, that underlying mortgage is being paid. So as that's being paid, that's creating additional equity. We started off with $331,000, I believe, on loan balance on the underlying loan. Yeah. Through this process, they will have paid that down. I said almost $18,000. So they're creating additional equity that they would have had if they just sold outright directly. So their interest rate on the new loan is obviously higher than the underlying loan, and it's starting out fresh. So their loan's going to pay down at a much slower rate than the underlying mortgage. So, but when they do refinance, we've already gotten the net difference on the down payment, where all transaction fees and everything are covered up front. We've got the monthly arbitrage on there of $38,000, and then we're getting $145,000 out at closing. So this is at that 3-year mark once that refinance comes into play. And we can get a lot. Go ahead, Ryan.
I like to point out that additional equity earnings, that being like the cherry on top. I mean, think about that. When you're renting a home, sometimes you're renting a home to break even, right? But we always say, oh, the benefit is appreciation plus them paying down your mortgage. The buyer is paying down your mortgage after you've sold the house, and you still get the benefit.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's really huge. It's unique and it's huge. So,
and the cool thing is on that, it's a win-win across the board for every person involved in the transaction. The buyer is more than happy to pay down that mortgage for you on there because they are getting a drastic reduction from what they'd be paying for the house next door.
Yeah, they're saving $650 a month.
Yeah. That's a big difference on a $600,000 home. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to save $600 a month on my house all day. find me a way to do it after I've already purchased it. That'd be great. But that's another
Or
story.
instead of saving that money, maybe instead of 600, they're buying a $750,000 home for the same payment. Again, it's like there it is.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dive into that one as well. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. So
and that's the other cherry. That's the double cherry on top.
Correct. So let's actually dive over to that. Let me show you that one on there. So as this comes in, this particular seller is buying an $850,000 house.
Oh shit!
So yeah. So their interest rate on there is coming in, and this one's actually about a week older, so was coming in a little bit higher on there at right around 7%. So their principal and interest payment is $4,500 a month. When they're applying this $1,058 directly to that payment, the equivalent interest rate, obviously their interest rate stays the same, but their effective interest rate they're paying has dropped from 7% to 4.64%. Well, that 4.64 outside of about a 2.5-year window is a historically fantastic rate.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's incredible. So for sellers that are listening to this, how would you like to be able to sell your home? And because you chose to do seller financing for a relatively short period of time with the buyer, between the time when your buyer pays off the loan and assuming you apply 100% of the cash flow that you made on the seller financing transaction to your new mortgage payment, your next interest rate, your equivalent payment would be based at a 4.64% with no points.
Yep.
No points. So we recommend, and this 7% interest rate was at a no point loan. We don't recommend points right now because we are in a falling interest rate environment. So we want to keep closing costs as low as possible. And when your buyer refinances, which we're actively managing the mortgage for the buyer, looking for ways to refinance them, we're also doing the same for the seller. So when interest rates drop, we're going to be able to drop that effective interest rate at 7% for the seller down to whatever the rates are at that time when it makes sense. And at that point is when the seller can look at paying points or not, because maybe we can get an interest rate in the, let's say rates are hovering around 5.5% ish, and you can buy down a rate into the 4s. Well, that makes sense at that time. And so, yes, so we've got it figured out that if the buyer does a refinance, well, the seller would be doing a refinance at the same point in time, right? So one of the people was like, well, you only get 4.64% when I'm applying the 1,058, and is only as long as the buyer is in there. That's the buyer is making doing the seller financing. When the buyer does do the refinance, A, you got paid off, and B, you would also be doing a refinance.
Can I add something in there? That $17,000 that you made on that equity buy down pays almost 2 points on this, or actually pays more than 2.5 points on this.
That's exactly right. So thank you, Eric.
For your refi?
The equity that they are paying down in your mortgage, that 17 grand is money you never would have gotten, but through our transaction you do, and that pays for your refinance cost plus your points buy down.
Yep.
So it's creating found money, and this is how banks make a ton of money. And we can get into that part when people call on because it is part of our intellectual property on how we offer some additional protections regarding around the due on sale clause in this. And so, yeah, we can go from there.
Certainly. So I worked this up, and I'm going to show you a couple other things on the next one here. I wanted to show you a $600,000 scenario. When the last audit I ran on the pipeline, our active listing is about $950,000 on a sales price, but we've got several that creep up into the $1 million, $2 million, even $3.9 million range. So I did pull another example that wasn't too high on here. We're coming in. This
is another seller, right, Eric?
This is a different seller. This is a different scenario. I built this directly off of an actual listing that we have going right now. I've tweaked a couple of the numbers. So, but in this scenario, they're selling a $1.6 million house. And 1.6 million, once you tick up over a certain number, and especially in areas that are slow, it's harder to move that property. So you really got to bring some eyes on there. And this really, really sings over $1 million. So in this scenario, the $1.6 million sale with 25% down, we're creating $2,685 in monthly income, and that's only because this particular seller still has a pretty high balance on their mortgage.
Okay.
But throughout the process, we're going to get them an extra $217,000, which equates to 30% more. On that one, we're still having that buyer come in 2% under market. They're going to save $1,500 a month, almost $1,600. And the cost savings on there is over $50,000, what they would do to try to get something comparable, and they would not even be able to get to this interest rate. It's just not available on the jumbo market. But they would be saving over $50,000 on what they could do to get to a little over 6% on it. So with this one, we've got an existing balance of $870,000. So we're right at about 50% equity. And what's important on this program, let me take a step back. You need one of two things, and if you have them both, it's magnificent. You need equity or you need a low interest rate. But we have these deals going on with a 7% interest rate. I think we did one about a month ago that we did a presentation on that was up in the 9s, but it made sense because their property had appreciated so high and they were carrying such an old loan that it was the interest rate they had didn't matter at all. So, but getting back to it, they've got about 50% equity and they've got a nice low interest rate. They're paying $4,000 a month. We're doing this comparable to a standard jumbo loan. So we're going to take 25% down. The seller's going to be financing $1.2 million, and they're going to give an interest rate of 5.375. Ryan and I ran pricing on this before we did the call on there, and you can't. I mean, it's nowhere available.
Jumbo interest rates are not available below 6.125 today, and for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and they and a 6.125 cost 3.8 points. So yeah, so then we backed into, it's basically a half point discount point per eighth better in interest rate. So even to get to 5.375, and we have the ability to shop 19 different jumbo lenders through our pricing system, just with a couple of clicks of the button. And so you cannot get, not a single lender today, this morning, was offering a 6.125% interest rate on August 8th. So you couldn't even get there. And this seller is offering a 5.375% interest rate. Wow. Again, making this home so much more attractive than any other home in this price point, because it's an interest rate that is not attainable from anybody else in the market other than the seller.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
As a seller, you're creating your own market. You've created your own market of one. Yeah,
Eric, can you show the marketing flyer on one of these? Because this is really huge on how it opens up for the seller, how it opens up the buyer pool.
Now, you'll have to forgive me because the flyer I show in here is a mock-up in my system, so it's not the prettiest thing on earth. But this basically represents what we'll put out on here. So on this property, buy this $1.6 million home for the same payment as a 1.373 home. Save $1,568 a month. We're going to showcase this, part of our marketing, part of the MLS language that goes out on there. The ability, again, to move up into a better price point. Now, $1 million homes are all great. I don't think there's a bad $1 million home out there. But you are still moving up a pretty good chunk of change for 1.3 million to 1.6 million.
Yeah. That's significant.
So, I mean, Chris, how many buyers do you know that want a more expensive home for the same price as the home that they're currently maxed out at?
Every one of them.
Right. So if you're currently maxed out, and if you're a seller and you're trying to attract more buyers, you now have opened the market up for buyers that are maxed out at basically 1.3 max is what they're willing to afford. But your 1.6 home is the same monthly payment.
Is affordable.
It's all the other 1.37 homes that you're looking at. There's a massive difference in that price point. We were looking at one the other day, and it was I did a presentation yesterday, and it was on a $570,000 home that currently is in multiple offer situations. That's between a more and a traditional, and it's equivalent to a $464,000 payment for the buyer.
Wow.
So you have buyers that are maxed out at $465,000, and now they can go buy a $570,000 home. That's huge. Now, more than likely, you heard me say multiple offer. More than likely, that seller might go with a traditional offer, and the home got sold, but it will sell for more, well, faster and for more, which is about the name, right? No pun intended, but actually pun intended. So it is about getting more out of your home. But what did that equal? And what Eric went back to, and I just want to drive it home. It's a marketing tool for your agents and for buyers to get to more eyeballs on your house, to create more activity, to hopefully drive more activity on your home, to generate more offers. But you may not end up taking a seller financing offer.
No,
but in
it's
this case, in a soft market, we're driving a multiple offer situation. So
yeah, that's not happening very much right now in August of 2024 in Austin, Texas, or anywhere else in Texas.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Let me chime in with something real quick. So we said that our target price point is 2% under current market. Now, a lot of this program is very customizable. It is somewhat modular in there. We can adjust that term for the balloon payment. We can also adjust that interest rate. I had a seller the other day, I had to convince to bring the interest rate that he's offering up to 3.9%. He's got so much equity in there. He's like, put it at 3.25. I'm like, look, man, I mean, we could do that, but listen, we're still going to get a whole lot of interest at even 4.99. But I ended up sending them two different versions, one of 3.9 and one at 3.25. And his agent, I think, is going to push it a little higher. But the point is, we can customize this to really meet the seller's needs. If your need is to get rid of this property and this payment off your back as soon as possible, well, let's talk about it. Let's see how low we can go on an interest rate. Let's see how absolutely gorgeous we can make this opportunity for a buyer. So we can set it in there and we can go. Our target that we start is 2%, but tell us how fast you want to sell it, or tell us how much money you want to make.
And remember, each seller is pre-approved, so we're not letting a seller do something that's detrimental to their goals and for their next property or whatever that looks like.
And that's the whole thing. And that's what I was going to point out. The point behind most sellers is they're selling this to buy something else. You guys have that in mind. You're not going to derail that.
No, not at all. That's the number one. I mean, just like you said, that's the number one goal, is to sell this to buy something else, whether you're upsizing, downsizing, relocating, whatever it looks like. So we have to have them pre-approved, and we won't let them at all accept something that would prevent them from accomplishing that transaction.
Right.
100%.
And the other thing, real quick, Eric, the other thing I want to point out, guys, if you're talking about moving from a $1.3 million price point to a 1.6, or you were saying from a 470 to a 570 price point, guys, there is a world of difference between houses in those different price points. Even if your delta is $60,000 at like a $350,000 price point, a $60,000 difference is a massive difference in the home that you're looking at from one to the next. So when you're telling buyers, hey, you can get this house for the same price as what you would get this house, buyers know that. They understand that because they're looking at these and they know what they can't afford. That's a huge marketing piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge is that you can't put it in MLS as a 470, right? When the real sales price is 570, right?
But that's where social media marketing comes in, and it's massive. And that's why agents that know, that's why they're doing social media marketing. You can't advertise that in the MLS, but you can damn sure make sure everybody knows it.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Perfect. Eric, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we get into kind of the back ends on how we get there. But for instance, here's kind of a workup on the back side of this. So you got your $1.6 million house. On the more program, they're coming in at 5.375, and that principal and interest payments coming in at 67.20. Current market rate, you're looking at 82.88. In order to take that same principal and interest payment, because this house is the 67.20 is as much as I can get qualified for. My debt to income ratio is absolutely maxed out. I can't qualify for a penny more. That's where we're coming in. I'm buying a house for $1,372,000 and change. So again, we're moving up in there. Now, with this process, you do not have traditional underwriting. You don't have an appraisal. You don't have processing fees. You don't have discount points you're buying down on here. More program, of course, we're going to charge our fees on there as well. But once you take a look and see exactly what it would take to get to a similar loan on this, you're looking at a savings of almost $53,000.
Yeah, and that's including the fees for the more program. I just want to point that out. Like that's taking that into account.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell everybody, I kind of chuckle through the calls on there that, yes, we're going to save you 28%, 19%, whatever that number is. We will charge our 1%. We're not a charity. But yeah, I mean, that's how we get to it. But it's really, it's not rocket science. What it is cleaning up a system that has previously been used in a completely different way. It's the seller financing has always been used to put somebody in a house that can't afford it, can't qualify for it, at an interest rate 2 to 3% over what rates are.
Over market.
Yeah, Ryan had the foresight to take a stagnant market because of high interest rates and changes in laws here in Texas to build out a fantastic program and to really legitimize the entire process, to protect the seller throughout this process, protect the buyer throughout this process. So in a normal process, a couple people will win. Maybe the buyer wins, maybe the seller wins. Agent's always going to win because they get to move a property.
That's right.
But in this, everyone wins. Everyone wins, including the lender, because the seller gets to be that lender. So yeah, it's designed to make it as transparent, as clean, and to follow the letter of the law to protect that seller from any types of predatory lending, protect from any of the caveats that came with Senate Bill 43 back in passed in 21, went into law in 2022. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we cleaned it up, and on top of that, we just want to make it easy for everyone involved. So we don't want you chasing payments. We don't want you having to decide who you want to lend to. Now, the seller will still decide who they want to lend to. When it comes down to it, we get an interested buyer in. We set up a call, kind of like this Google Meet that we're having right here. Yeah. We're going to go through the program steps with the buyer. We're going to see if they're on board. We're going to let them know all the limitations of how we need to make sure they are pre-qualified, everything else. Then Ryan's team's going to pre-qualify them. We're going to get back on the phone with the seller and the seller's agent and the listing agent. And we're going to say, okay, we're going to, again, give everything short of the Social Security number as far as qualification details on there. And we're going to make sure the seller is comfortable. And the seller is going to decide, do I want to lend to this person? Now, if we've done our job right, if we've marketed this incorrectly, they've got two offers. And one of them will come in and it's traditional. They're going to decide, yeah, do I want to take this little bit lower traditional offer that still meets my needs? Or do I want to make more on this and sell on the seller financing and get my payout over that 3 years? And at that point, if they take the traditional offer, fantastic. We've done our job.
Yeah.
We've moved the property a little bit faster. We've created more interest in there. We've certainly made that real estate agent a lot happier because they've now moved that transaction. Hopefully, we've captured the actual loan over on the Leahy lending side. But if not, we've still built our relationships across the board, and it's a win across the board. So
yeah, we've made the seller considerably more money than a traditional transaction. They have to wait for, it's kind of the one marshmallow versus two marshmallow. When you see that as a kid,
yep.
They put the study. So you get paid out more over time. Some people that doesn't work for.
Right.
And that's okay too. This is just an option. It's a marketing solution. More than 54% of the time, sellers end up going with their traditional transaction, or we're able to convert it to a traditional transaction. So, but the other times they're accepting a seller financing offer because it's the best offer that they have available. Right. And it meets their needs, allowing them to move on and still accomplish their goal where we will do the loan for them the seller on the other side. Now, they're not required, but we are the only people that built the loan that allows for a seller financing transaction to be used, and so they can qualify for the next payment. So I'm not aware of another lender that's done that just yet, because they don't have this program, because we are the first in the nation that has it.
And that's what I want to point out also is y'all are a lender. You do mortgages, you do jumbos, you do FHAs, you do all of this stuff. And what people need to understand about that is this isn't like it's not a attorney office somewhere coming up with something, and they don't necessarily have to follow, Eric, you said it a while ago, the letter of the law. I mean, there's a lot of lending requirements placed on you guys by the federal government that y'all have to abide by. So when you come up with a program like this, it has to be vetted. It has to be, again, letter of the law. Like, this is a legit thing. This isn't a fly by night going, hey, this is a way that somebody can make money and we're going to move on down the road afterwards and we're going to duck any responsibility after the fact. No, these loans stick with you guys for years if y'all screw this up. So I just want to point that out for the general public. Like, this has been vetted. This isn't something they came up with last weekend. This is years in the making. So
yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I came up with this idea in December of 2022, and I assembled a team of 11 people and 3 different law firms. And it took us from that period of time all through R&D. We've tackled this from every different angle that it could be tackled from. And not only do you have a 23-year mortgage veteran, me, doing this and being easily Googleable, but our law firm partner has closed more seller financing transactions than any other law firm in the state of Texas. They've closed more than 15,000 seller financing transactions over the last 16 years. There's not a single scenario that they haven't seen or heard over a 15-year period of time. And so we've been engaged more than 300 times to review these for sellers. And we've got, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of listings that have happened in several and successful transactions under our belt. So it's a great program, and an opportunity for sellers to have their home differentiated from all the other homes in that price point, and also increase the buyer pool that they're currently marketing to. And you are right. Social media is a fantastic way to get it out there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Eric, any last thoughts on this or things that you've seen as you're going through this?
Well, I don't know. You put me on the spot with that one. I kind of, I gave you everything I had with the slideshow. So I'm going to leave this in Ryan's hands if he wants to chime in with anything there. But again, actually, I will say, so I came over here to the MORE program. I'm a mortgage veteran of many years as well. I'm also a real estate investor. And I saw, we're all familiar with seller financing. We didn't invent anything new over here. Ryan didn't create this or pull it out of thin air. Again, it's a refined process. I came over, I was asked to come review this and take a look at this by another employee. So I came over, went over to his house. I looked through this, and knowing similar transactions on the typical investor side, I was on board. I worked for him 4 days later. I mean, I couldn't get on board fast enough. So no, it's great. Again, the protections in place and just the easy use really impressed me from the beginning, and that's why I'm on this video right here. So.
And now I've worked your way up from the bottom to being VP.
Yeah.
So, way to go, Eric. Yeah, Chris, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, it's easy to get a hold of me. My information's everywhere. Leahy Lending information's all down below in the description. If you want to have a conversation, you can call me, you can click on the link, you can schedule Calendly and Google invites and all of that stuff down below. Get in direct contact with Ryan if you want to. But awesome program, something I have never seen before, obviously, and something that gets me excited, something that I'm pitching to my own buyers and sellers in the process of setting up meetings with several people with Ryan and his team. So if you've got questions, dive into it. Don't be afraid to ask. When things are done the right way, questions are fairly easy to answer. And that's kind of what we're finding as we go through this.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Chris. You can find us at moresellerfinancing.com. You also, our Facebook page, we talk about social media. It's like, well, where do I find all these properties that are being offered with these incredible interest rates so I can buy more home? So it's you go to Facebook and type in more seller financing. And so we're actually rolling out of Austin and opening up Dallas here in about on August 15th, and about 7 days. And so there will be each city that will be online. So it'll be more seller financing Austin, more seller financing Dallas, more seller financing Houston as we roll out the new cities. And so that's where that'll be one of the areas that consumers can find where these homes are, and how we can help them through the come together. And it's our job to build a win-win transaction for all parties involved. And we help everybody stay realistic. And we built all these proprietary calculators to explain it, as well as all the steps, including the entire turnkey team. So it's the servicing company, all the insurance agents, the law firms, to make sure everything's handled with the letter of the law, as well as a very refined process. Again, I would challenge anybody that's thinking about doing it themselves, or hey, there's a law firm that, oh yeah, they've done seller financing. It's yes, if you have an attorney that's done seller financing, most of the time it's generally with the home that's paid off. Anything other than that is going to be a highly refined process that, again, took me a team of 11 people in 7 months with 3 law firms. And we took this all the way to Washington, D.C. And not only that, I hired the law firm that RESPA, the federal government, calls that attorney, and that's the attorney we engaged with. We also have an attorney, and the same attorney is engaged with by Dodd-Frank from the lending side. And they gave us the blessing and said this does not violate any federal transactions laws, that this is managed by the states. And so we are the state seller financing specialist, and adding on those law firms throughout the country. So, again, our legal partners closed more than 15,000 of these transactions. And, we've closed more than 4,000. I personally have closed more than 4,000 loans over my 23-year career. And I'm very blessed. And so when you combine all of that experience along with the experience of the people on our team, like Eric, who's a very seasoned lending professional loan officer as well, and a real estate investor, those are the people that we're looking to add to the team. So matter of fact, we're hiring right now. So if this intrigues you and you're interested in becoming a part of the More team so that you can, expand your career, as well as have an opportunity to take a look at these houses as they come in, most certainly reach out to us through themoresellerfinancing.com. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.